And I just want to challenge you and say, is it okay not to know? Well, hello there, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited to chat with you today. And, I have a lot of things that I do the podcast about that come out of questions clients ask me, or people ask my DMs, or just something that pops up, an idea a lot of times when I'm doing business coaching. And so I had a recent mindset meeting for clients, because how many of you know that 80% of business is built in your mind, 20% is built on strategy, but 80% of your business is going to be built on, do you have a good, healthy mindset around the idea of business, around the idea of success, around the idea of sales, around the idea of money. And so, yeah, there's that. So I'm in a mindset meeting, and there was someone that said, and I wrote it down here so that I've got it. Thank you, Kelly, for getting my notes together. I've decided to close one part of my business. I'm now trying to become more of a personal brand. I'm having a hard time. I don't know what to do next. Okay. That was essentially, in a nutshell, her question. Her question was that she just doesn't know what she needs to do now. Like, where do I go from here? Or where am I going from here? Okay. And I think that she maybe expected me to tell her, she needs to get a plan. She needs to figure it out. But instead, I told her, sometimes I think we just need to give time. I remember hearing that saying, give time, years ago. And for some reason, I was like, ooh, I feel that. Do any of you feel that? Like, to give time? And it's not like time will heal all wounds, because I don't think that that's true. I think that sometimes time just builds bitterness. But I do think that sometimes we have to give time. We have to give God time. And I think timing is so important to God. I know Jill, who's one of my spiritual mentors, she always says that God is or timing and time is one of the first things that God talked about as being holy in the Bible. And time matters to God. There's, seasons for everything, is what Ecclesiastes says. And so I think my client maybe expected me to say, well, you need to really figure some things out and do a brain dump and ask 10 friends and, jump on your head and go give blood or whatever else. But instead I told her, I really wish that we could normalize seasons of just not knowing, like seasons of being in limbo. And I think that often we are conditioned, starting at childhood, to have everything figured out and know what the next season is going to include or look like or where we're headed. It starts with us asking little children, what do you want to be when you grow up? I very rarely ask kids that. I mean, it's a fun question, but also I feel like when that is coupled with then, in high school, you're asking them, where they're going to go to college, what they want to do with their life. I think about how Ava, who's a junior, when she went into being a freshman at high school, they had to pick a pathway. Do you want to go into engineering? Do you want to go into business? Do you want to go into health and medical? Who the heck knows at 14, 15? I mean, literally. These kids, they don't even have hair on their chest yet. You know what I'm saying? That the boys, not the girls. But you're expecting them to know, to pick a pathway for their high school. Then they'll take more classes that are medical if they've decided they want to be a nurse or whatever. Stop asking these children. Oh my gosh, why does this get me? Stop asking them. It's pressure. We put so much pressure on them to know what's next. And then we expect them, to get to college as a freshman and know immediately what they want to do. Have you ever, how many of you are currently doing jobs that are in the field that your degree is in? That's one question. Second question. And if you're watching me on YouTube right now, I want you to make a comment. If you're listening on a podcast app, I want you to take a screenshot of this podcast, share it on Instagram, tag me, and tell me the answer to these questions. Number one, are you using the degree that you have if you have a degree? And number two, and are you enjoying it? Because there's a lot of people stuck in jobs. They got an accounting degree. Now they're an accountant. They freaking hate it. They feel like they're going into prison every day. And by the way, not because it's accounting. I mean, there's people who are artists and don't like that. You know what I'm saying? So it could be all over the place. But, you're expected in college then to know what you want to do. And I just think that we go through life and Life is lifey. There's changes and there's seasons, and we change as people. What I loved as like a high schooler was so different than what I loved for that 1 year of college where I went and lost my mind, was so different than what I loved in my early 20s when I was still living, like a heathen and newly married. It's so different than what I love now. I was thinking the other day, in fact, like, do we need to sell our kayaks? We haven't been kayaking. We're not kayaking like once last year, I think once the year before. And now I just want paddle boards to use at our house in Florida, usually on the beach. And I'm like, is my season of kayaking over? Am I sad about that? I don't know. I know that I really wanted to get back into running this year, but instead Jason and I have tried to, well, not tried. I've picked up pickleball. And I'm like, is it okay that I'm laying down being a runner? Is this the new me now? Is the new me the one who does pickleball and paddleboarding instead of running and kayaking? I don't know, but like we change, right? So we're expected to like have all these answers and know things. And as a high schooler, as a college person, I know that it makes so many people feel inadequate, like an idiot, if you don't know like what's next. And then you get to become a grown up, an adult. You have a business. You decide to close down part of your business, or you decide to start a new one, or you decide that you want to make a shift or a change. And we can feel so awful and pressured by not knowing what's next or where God's taking us next or what God wants us to do next. And I just want to challenge you and say, is it okay not to know? Could we normalize that? Is it okay sometimes just to stand or even just to sit on things for a minute without feeling like we have to jump from one season immediately to another, even if we're not sure that's the next direction we're supposed to be headed in? I just want to normalize like seasons of not knowing and seasons of just being in limbo. And I don't think that this is a conversation enough people are having. When I was talking to that client the other day, I was telling her about our oldest son, Noah, he's 22. He moved to Scottsdale, Arizona about 18 months ago. And he moved down there 18 months ago to manage a sneaker store, which was awesome until it wasn't, right? That happens with a lot of jobs. So, he worked a lot of hours. He was a lot of times by himself. He was very lonely. He's definitely a people person. He's Enneagram 7. The store wasn't as busy as what they hoped that it would be. So he ended up leaving and going to do like working security at a club. The hours were terrible. His mama was praying against it. And so now he's in the auto selling cars industry, which has a lot of long days. He's like the youngest in selling, Infinities. Interest rates are high. The economy isn't great. It's literally 114 degrees, I think, in Scottsdale today. And so I'm not going to be shocked if he ends up switching again. And the moral of the story is like, I'm okay with him bouncing around right now. I'm okay with him not being for sure what it is that's next for him. I'm okay with him trying on different hats because it's harder to do like when you're married with children, right? Then it just gets, because bills are a real thing. But I feel like as a culture, we feel very pressured to know what we want to do and to know what's next. We don't like the unknown. We want plans. We want schedules. We want to know. I think sometimes like the unknown is so scary to us that people will stay in relationships, positions, jobs, cities, careers, etc., for far longer than they should, because they would rather stay in places and situations, even if those are bad for them, because they're familiar, than they would take a chance on the unknown. They would rather stay in a horrible relationship with their boyfriend than be alone in the unknown. At least they know that. They would rather stay at a job they hate than become an entrepreneur full-time, even though they detest that job. They cry half the days before they go to work. But that feels for them somehow safer than taking a chance and betting on themselves and going into business for themselves. We gravitate towards and often cling to what we know, and we don't like seasons of unknowing. We don't like not knowing where we're headed next. And so I just want to normalize for some of you business owners, that season of limbo. It's a weird time in the world. There are so many people in the online space who are really seeing things go backwards right now. Can we just normalize that conversation too? 2020 for a lot of online businesses was the best thing that ever happened. Awful for the world, awful for, society, awful for friendships and losing people and the physical things that happened during COVID. But 2020 was incredible for us online business owners. Can we normalize things that are just changing and a lot of people are going backwards and we don't know what's next? And I think that's okay. Could we normalize just being like, Lord, I don't know what's next for me, but I know that you're in it. And I'm just going to watch for open doors, walk through those. I'm going to just see where you're leaving favor for me. I'm just going to head in that direction. I'm going to watch, Lord, for some hints in the, like you can just watch for like little crumbs is what, some people say that God leaves. And just like, I'm going to go in that direction as I don't know. Can we just normalize that? Could we also normalize not having to like set goals in January and December? I've done podcasts on that every year. That I think sometimes it's great to do that. It's okay to set some goals for the year. You want to be at a certain weight. You want to have a certain amount of money. You want to finish your degree in this. You want to do that, whatever. I think that's fine. But could we couple that with, Lord, what do you want from me? Or just not knowing. Can we just normalize that? I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves that we don't give time, and that we don't give God time. Not that he's like, oh, this is where we're doing now. Okay, I need to adjust my plans because that's not it. But we can't rush God or his timetable. And seasons of limbo and seasons of like really not knowing what's next, and there being a lot of like, I don't even know what decisions have to be made because I don't even know what's next. Like, I think those are seasons that often grow us to be so much closer in our walk with the Lord because we're more reliant on God. I think that there's often a very hidden gift in the unknown. And so if you're finding yourself right now in a season of not knowing what's next, like I just want you to reframe how you are looking at it. Could you look at it instead of like, it's terrifying? Could you look at it instead and be like, this is exciting. There are opportunities that are just going to be right around the corner. I wonder what they're going to be. Could you look at it with expectancy instead of pressure? Could you view it as there's going to be opportunities instead of viewing this season as absolutely awful? I want you to remember, if this is a season of just not knowing what's next, like if God is for you, who can be against, right? If God's in it, it's okay that you don't know. He does. He's not up there wringing his hands, wonder what's next for you, Julie, or what's new next for you, Sally, or what's new next for you, Susan. Like he's not. He's got it all figured out. Like give him time. Give time. Take a breather, take some pressure off yourself. And let's just like normalize not having all the answers for what's next. And I think especially if you are parents, I think that's good for your children to see too, because there will be times in their life where they're uncertain of what is next for them, and how you handle the season that you're currently in it will pay itself back. It will, you never know how them watching you during this season is that they're going to be able to draw from that in their own season of unknown. And remember how mom or dad or aunt or uncle or grandma or whoever, how they handled just not having the answers. What did their faith look like during that time? What was their countenance like? What was their attitude like? How did they handle just not knowing? I think that's a good lesson that we could leave our children with. I hope this was helpful today. If you're on YouTube, I want you to leave me a comment below. If you are listening to this on YouTube or on one of the podcast apps, and you know someone who could benefit from this conversation, you have a friend, a sister, a neighbor who's in a season of in-between and indecision and limbo, would you send this to them? And I hope that this podcast is a blessing to them as well. Love you much, friends. All right, we'll talk soon. Bye-bye. Hello, Easton, my old friend. I've got a podcast for you again. Son, you're going back to school next week. Now who's gonna make sure that I've got everything ready for my podcast?